For years ago, I lived in a very large farmhouse that was converted into two apartments. The house was known as the old boys' home. It was used to house boys with behavioral issues, but was closed due to allegations of molestation. Anyway, I was living with my boyfriend and 3-year-old daughter at the time. My bedroom had a large fireplace that had been boarded up and painted over. I decided to push my bed up against it one day while I was rearranging things. It was like a headboard. That night, around 1 a.m. I had heard a small voice saying, "Mom, Mom, Mommy." I had sat up in bed but didn't see anything, so I reached over my boyfriend trying to grab my daughter and put her in our bed. I kept feeling around and I was still hearing the voice, but I couldn't feel her. My boyfriend woke up and turned the bedside lamp on, asking me, "What the hell are you doing?" I explained that Amelia was trying to get in our bed and I was reaching for her. There was nobody there. My daughter was sound asleep in her room. Then the next night came. Around 1 a.m. again. My dog had started to whimper at outdoor, so my boyfriend got up to take him outside. You know that feeling in a bed when someone lies down next to you, where the bed pushes in and there is a warmth in your back? I felt that, so I assumed my boyfriend had come back to bed. I rolled over, my boyfriend wasn't in the bed, and I felt the bed release pressure. Whatever was laying next to me has gotten up in that second. I moved my bed the next day to the other side of the room, and I never had another incident in the 2 years I remained in that house.
Before I was born, my mom lost my sister during childbirth, who would have been my brother's twin. After that, me and my mom have experienced something that we think could be my sister trying to contact us. Don't mind if my writing isn't the best, my first language isn't English. The day that my sister passed and my mom was leaving the hospital, a small bird had gotten into the aisle of the newborn babies, who were in critical condition. No one knew how. Since the aisle was in one of the upper floors, and there were no open doors nor windows in the aisle, my mom just knew it was her baby. My sister's grave is located in a graveyard behind a school. There is 2 big old trees in front of the grave. Once I was going to see the grave on my own, candle in hand, that I was going to light up for her. There was no one in the graveyard from what I could see from the gate, and the school was already closed for the day. Once I got to the grave and crouched down to light up the candle, I felt the cool wind stop in its tracks. I felt weirdly warm for it being the fall. And right before I was about to light the candle up, I felt an overwhelming rush of emotion and started crying. You have to understand here that I've never been so emotional about my sister's death, since I never even got to meet her and I was fine with only having brothers. It felt weird, but oddly comforting. It was the only time I spent more than 5 minutes at her grave. As I just felt like I couldn't leave just yet, I lighted up the candle and stayed at her grave for longer than I had expected. When I felt the cold breeze again, I finally left and have been many times since.
I met a ghost under the Golden Gate Bridge. A date and I went to the North Tower to watch the sunset. You can walk down an incline and there are huge granite blocks left over from the bridge construction. You can watch the fog roll in and hear the foghorn's long low notes. We were there until it got dark and then started walking back up to the car. I looked up and there was a man sitting on top of one of the blocks. I said hello and he nodded. He was wearing a plaid shirt, suspenders, wool pants and old work boots. He was smoking a scruffy old pipe and I could see the smoke curling up from it. We talked for a minute and I noticed that we were the last car left in the parking lot. I asked him if someone was picking him up and he said, "I've been waiting a fair while. My wife and my daughter will be here eventually and we can go home together." I asked him if he wanted a ride just to the south end of the bridge and he smiled and said that he knew that they'd be walking to meet him and they would all finish the trip together. I can't think of a worse place to walk. The Golden Gate Bridge is long and it's freezing cold. It's a long, long drop to the water below, but he sounded firm. So I said have a good night then. About that time I noticed that my date hadn't said a word. I look over and he's frozen, then grabbed my elbow and pushed me to the car. He hurt my arm, he pushed so hard. We got in the car and he was really speeding. We crossed the toll plaza and he started yelling, "Who the hell were you talking to? Are you nuts? What the FCK?" He was really panicking because he'd felt that something was very, very wrong. He hadn't seen the man. He saw me have a conversation with thin air, but he said the temperature dropped so much that he was shaking. He also said the air was electric, and he thought that if we didn't get out of there, we might be two of those people who just disappear and are never found. He saw a swirl in there and smelled tobacco smoke on the breeze. I finally figured it out, at least in my mind. This was in the 1980s. The Golden Gate Bridge was completed in 1937, and quite a few men building it died. He probably was one of them, and he was waiting for when his wife and his daughter died, and they would meet him then and go on, wherever the afterlife took them. I hope it was someplace beautiful. I never spoke to my date again. He called me Ghost Girl. I can't blame him.
When I worked at a psych hospital, every morning at roughly the same time, you could hear footsteps running down the service hallway. I only took note of this after a couple of weeks of this happening, when I noticed that around AM is when it happened, and that afterwards there were never sounds of doors closing or opening. For context, this was in a hallway where there were doors on both ends which were pretty much impossible to close silently due to the latches that were on them. One night it started, and I got up and ran to the hallway, but didn't see anyone. Looked all around, no one. There were these fisheye mirrors up in the corners, between the walls and ceiling that let you see if someone was around the corner or coming up behind you. And one time, the footsteps started, but I didn't see anyone in those mirrors when I immediately turned the corner into the hallway. It very well could have been a very quick and sneaky patient. I really don't believe in ghosts, but lots of people swore that place was very haunted, and someone else explained being aware of the footsteps in the hallway, and said it was a ghost that had been there for a long time. Either way, it was pretty creepy when it happened at 2 AM when everything else was quiet. I got a little unnerved whenever I went to mop that hallway in the early morning hours.